So let's generate our motivation. Now that we have this time and have all the conducive circumstances to be able to practice the Dharma, let's have a strong determination to use our time wisely, to free our mind from attachment to only this life, to free it from attachment, clinging to all of cyclic existence, to free it from the self-centered thought, and to free it from all grasping so that we can actualize our fullest potential, becoming Buddhas for the benefit of all sentient beings. Let's remember that that's why we're here, and keep coming back to our motivation whenever our mind wanders off to something else. So on the retreat, what we're retreating from is not the world, because we can't retreat from the world, we can't retreat from society. What we're trying to retreat from is negative states of mind, okay, from ignorance, anger, and attachment. So, we have a schedule, and the schedule is designed to really help us keep our mind focused. And so it's a combination of meditation and teachings and break time and, some offering service. And so this is designed to have, so that we have a broad experience, because if you don't have teachings, then you don't know how to meditate. If you only meditate, then, at our level, when, you're going from your busy workaholic life to this all of a sudden, if you only meditate, you're going to go stir crazy. So we have to have some teachings to learn how to meditate. We need to meditate. And then we need, in the break time, to remember the teachings and remember the meditation and apply them in the break time. Okay? So, this means remembering Chenrezig, remembering Chenrezig's qualities, remembering that we are trying to develop Chenrezig's qualities, and so trying to act with those qualities as much as possible during the break time. So Chenrezig, like all the Buddhas, they have the same nature of wisdom and compassion. They have the same realizations, but Chenrezig's specific speciality is compassion. So we want to remember compassion during the break time. So that means applying compassion too. So it's very easy to have compassion for people very far away from us, who we don't see, who we aren't engaged with, but it's very hard to have compassion often for the people that we live with, and so it's time to clean up after lunch, and they need another person, and my compassion has gone down the drain. Because I don't feel like being that other person that needs to help out in the kitchen. Because I'm not on the rota and it's not my turn. And I did it before. And besides, I'm exhausted and I need to rest. So it doesn't matter that other people cooked our food and have been kind to us in cooking the food and serving it. At that very moment, what I want is the most important thing. And, the need of the group is out the window. Yeah? So this is, the time when we really try and put compassion into practice, is those various situations. Okay? So that's the time when we least want to practice compassion, isn't it? Yeah. So I'm tired and I've done my share. So it's other people's turn. Actually, I've done more than my share. Yeah. Even if I haven't, I still have. Yeah. So, to really try and remember compassion at those times, and to try and remember compassion when it comes to being at the sessions on time and staying in the session throughout the whole session, unless you're really going to go to the bathroom in your pants. Then please leave. But otherwise, try and stay in the session for the whole time, for the benefit of all the other people. Yeah? Okay? And similarly with keeping our rooms tidy, with keeping the common spaces tidy and not leaving our stuff all around. All of this, it sounds like very trivial stuff, but it's a practice of mindfulness, and we do it because we care about the people we live with, and we care about the environment we live in. So we try and, act with compassion in these situations. Okay? That doesn't mean we have to become Mickey Mouse Bodhisattva, yeah, and get ourselves totally exhausted because we're volunteering to do everything. We're not talking about that, okay? Because clearly we have to, take care of our own body. Otherwise, other people are going to have to, step in for us if we don't take care of ourselves and get sick. So we take care of ourselves, but for the benefit of everybody, not just because of me. Okay? So in your break times, I have noticed sometimes, maybe this was more at Cloud Mountain, hopefully it's not here, but when we had the week-long retreats at Cloud Mountain, people would become couch potatoes. They would take a Dharma book, sit on the couch. We don't have couches here. Yeah. Oh, maybe that's the remedy, is not having a couch. Yeah. And then they would be there just gobbling up Dharma books. It's helpful to read, a little bit during the break time. Try and stick with books, on Lam Rim and thought training and things about Chenrezig. In other words, the practice that we're doing. Don't go reading Zen materials and, how to construct plumbing and this kind of stuff. But stay on what we're doing. And don't, and read a little bit and then think about it. So don't just have the mind that I have to read and gobble up all this information and stuff my mind full of more words. What we need is a little bit of words and more application, more contemplation on it. Yeah? So you can sit in one of the chairs, not the sofas, and, read something and then sit and think about it, and read something more and sit and think about it. It's beautiful on the deck outside. But don't read every session, all session. Every break time, all break times. Okay? Go out and get some exercise, because if you get some exercise and walk, that relaxes your body and it relaxes your mind. Okay? And so you keep in mind Chenrezig when you're doing that, and you can walk and say mantra or think about the different topics that we've discussed in the sessions. Yeah, because what you're getting in the sessions is only the tip of the iceberg. You have to really think about it more and more yourself to get it. But think about these things as you walk around and make analogies of the teachings with what you see. You know, one of our great analogies is the cloud in the sky. You know, for the sky's pure nature, like the pure nature of the mind. The clouds are the afflictions that aren't the nature of the mind. They come and they go. You know, look at plants. Think about dependent arising and cause and effect, and how, you know, things arise due to causes. Huh? So, you know, just apply what you learn. When you see different bugs, you know, around, think, I'm practicing the Dharma for their benefit. Yeah, may they have precious human lives in the future, and you know, may I guide them in the Dharma, and say the mantra out loud so that, you know, the bugs can hear it. Okay? So that's a nice way of applying the focus up here, folks. Don't look at Venerable Tarpa. She is just moving the curtain. It's not so interesting. You see how the mind is so easily distracted? Yeah? By, you know, what is most important to pay attention to, and you don't pay attention to that. Yeah? The mind goes off to something else. So stay focused on what's important. Okay, so I thought in this session to talk a little bit about the background of Chenrezig or Kuan Yin. Okay? The Sanskrit name for Chenrezig is Avalokiteshvara. Yeah, so Avalokiteshvara was one of the bodhisattva. Well, there's many ways in which Avalokiteshvara appears in different aspects of the Buddha's teachings. So when we just chanted the Heart Sutra, yeah, there Avalokiteshvara, Tibetan name Chenrezig, Chinese name Kuan Yin, Japanese name Canon, Vietnamese name, what's the Vietnamese name? I think it's something like Kuan Yin. Yeah. Anyway, you know, appears in different forms. So in the Heart Sutra, Avalokiteshvara was one of the bodhisattva disciples of the Buddha and was the speaker of the Heart Sutra. Okay? In other contexts, you know, Chenrezig, Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara appears in different ways. In the Tibetan practice, it's become a meditation deity, you know, of the Kriya Tantra class of Tantra, which is the initial or lower class of Tantra. And the Tibetans have the story about Avalokiteshvara having great compassion and wanting very much to liberate all sentient beings from suffering, and so would liberate many sentient beings from the hell realms, you know, and empty the hell realms out, and then look at the hell realms again, and they were completely filled with more sentient beings in the hell realms. And at one point, just watching this over and over again of, you know, more liberating countless sentient beings and then more of them filling up the hell realms, Chenrezig's compassion got so great that his head split into 1,000 pieces. So that's why the form of Chenrezig we meditate on has 1,000 heads. No, I'm sorry, 1,000 eyes. Yeah, because there's 1,000 arms and there's an eye in each arm, but also split into 11 heads. Okay, so some other interesting things about okay, here's the Vietnamese name, Quan. Okay. Also, in Korea, Guan or Guanseum. So very popular all throughout Asia. Even in the Theravada countries, you will find statues of Kuan Yin. Because, Buddhism, it was initially a tantric practice, spread into all throughout Asia, and even though countries later became Theravada, just, the culture of Kuan Yin was still there. So when I was in Thailand some years ago, staying at a very traditional Thai Theravada temple, the master there was building a small temple for Kuan Yin. Yeah. And he had some definite karmic connection with Kuan Yin. It was quite beautiful to see. If you go to Sri Lanka, you'll find, remnants of Kuan Yin statues from ancient times that used to be there. Okay, so from the Tibetan viewpoint, the practice of Chenrezig or Kuan Yin, is a tantra practice, so it was only taught to very select people who were bodhisattvas, who were highly intelligent people. In the general Mahayana tradition, the earliest mention of Kuan Yin in a public scripture, because for a long time many of the Mahayana texts and the Tantrayana texts were passed down very not in a public way, but just very quietly and privately from teacher to disciple. But one of the earliest public mentions of Kuan Yin was in the Lotus Sutra, in the Universal Gate chapter of the Lotus Sutra. And this was first translated into Chinese in 286 AD. Okay, and in it, Kuan Yin vowed to rescue anybody threatened by murder, fire, shipwreck, or other disasters, and would assume one of more than 30 guises to aid victims. And here, 7 of 33 manifestations of Kuan Yin are female. So in East Asia in particular, Kuan Yin sometimes a male, sometimes a female. Okay, in the Surangama Sutra, Kuan Yin also appears. It's another Mahayana sutra, very popular in China. And there, 6 of the 32 manifestations of Kuan Yin are female. And the Pure Land Sutras, which talk about the practice of Amitabha, describe Kuan Yin as both an emanation of Amitabha and as an emissary of Amitabha. So if you're going to be born in Amitabha's Pure Land, Kuan Yin is one of the people who comes and helps you. Some of the oldest images of Kuan Yin were as the lotus, the one holding the lotus, that the Sanskrit name is Padmapani, as known in India. And then, beginning in the 5th century AD, there was the legend about Miao Shan, one young Chinese woman who was a manifestation of Chenrezig. And I thought I would tell you that story in a minute. Okay. In the 6th to the 9th centuries, one of the most popular forms of Kuan Yin, because we have all these different forms, was the compassionate liberator, who appeared either seated or standing, holding a bottle of nectar and a willow sprig. So when you go upstairs into the dining room, when you just come up the stairs and there's the Chenrezig on the pedestal, that's that Chenrezig. Okay. Also downstairs, that yeah, in the foyer, you know, holding the vase and the willow sprig. Okay, it says that a touch of the willow sprinkled with the nectar that's in the vase cures mental and physical ills. And so you find all throughout Asia, when people are sick, you know, they make offerings and pray to Kuan Yin. When they're in danger, again, they call out to Kuan Yin. Okay, and then when Vajrayana entered China in the 7th century A.D., there Kuan Yin began to have, you know, numerous heads and numerous arms. Yeah, so I think within China now, you know, I saw one book where they talk about 108 manifestations of Kuan Yin. In our Kuan Yin room, you know, in Chenrezig Hall, the form there, seated on the elephant, is Kuan Yin appearing as Samantabhadra. Okay, but there's also a story about the elephant. Let me find it here. Where was it? Yes, so this is again about Princess Miao Shan. I'll tell you her other story later. So she had ordained, and she planned to search for the truth, but she encountered some problems while crossing a mountain. So a white elephant came forward and saved her. And after saving her, the elephant didn't leave her, but stayed with her, and they went to seek the truth together. Okay? And so it was believed that Princess Miao Shan found the truth, gained full awakening, and later became known as Kuan Yin. And the white elephant since then has become her spiritual companion that she sits on. Okay? So it's these stories, they may be true, they may not. I don't think it matters, but in each of these stories, there's something to learn. Yeah? And I think of this story and, you know, her courage in going out to seek the Dharma, to seek the truth, no matter what, encountering difficulties, yeah, not giving up, but something coming and, you know, the white elephant coming and helping out. You know, that whenever we get into really dire straits, usually there's some kind of help that comes if we can be open to it. And then to see this spiritual relationship develop between the elephant and Kuan Yin. You know, because in the story, of course, you know, the elephant could think and speak and do all these other things. But the spiritual friendship and the sense of care and devotion to each other that they have in helping each other actualize the path. So that's, you know, to me it reminds me of how we want to be with our Dharma friends. You know, having that same sense of care and loyalty. Not meaning people-pleasing, not meaning codependence, yeah, but just appreciation of people's qualities and wanting to give our Dharma friends support and to receive their support. You know, instead of having the mind that, well, this is just all about my practice, so I'm going off to the cave. Ciao, everybody. Good luck. Yeah, but, you know, feeling that connection and support that we give each other. Okay, so let me read you now the story about Princess Miao Shan that became popular in China. There's different variations on the details of this story. Yeah. But again, whether it's true or not, there's things that we can learn from it. Okay? So there was once a king who had 3 daughters, and the youngest was named Miao Shan, meaning wonderful virtue. Okay, at the moment of her birth, the earth shook, the sky rained down flowers, and a delicate scent filled the air around her. This is reminiscent of when the Buddha was born, similar auspicious things. So many people said that these signs indicated a most sacred incarnation. But the king and the queen didn't care beans about that, because they were both very greedy. The only thing they wanted was to acquire as much material wealth as possible. And they found it difficult to understand this little girl who was pure of heart and who focused exclusively on virtuous deeds. Okay? So the king and queen sounds like our society, doesn't it? How our society, we are taught to be greedy, to accumulate as many material possessions as possible, as much fame, reputation, and all of this as possible. And that is generally seen as the meaning of life. And that's basically how we were raised, isn't it? We were raised with manners and, don't be too obnoxious, don't be too unethical, but whenever you can get something for yourself, do it. Right? Yeah? Unless you were going to look really bad being selfish. In that case, then, do something nice for somebody so that you look good. Yeah? But always there's this self-centered motivation behind our virtuous actions. So the king and queen just embody that attitude. So, here they have a daughter who was pure of heart and focused exclusively on virtuous deeds. And mom and dad are going, what the beep, beep, beep is this kid doing in our family? Doesn't have our values, doesn't want to do what we want to do. Have you ever felt that way in your family? Sometimes? Okay. So when Miao Shan grew up, her father expected her to marry. Okay, this is, of course, the only opportunity for success a woman had is to get her MRS degree. Yeah? So this is thankfully changing nowadays, but still, for many of us, women and men, you're expected to marry, aren't you? Yeah? Get married, settle down, be normal. Yeah? Get a good job, get a mortgage, get a car with your car insurance and your car payments. Yeah, get a credit card, go into credit card debt. This is what's expected. Okay, so that, same thing with Miao Shan. But she resisted his decision and said she would only marry if it would help her to free humanity from suffering. Now imagine what mom and dad said to that one. Yeah, so... but if this was not to be, her aim was to continue her spiritual practice and use it to help all sentient beings, both humans and animals and beings of all the different realms. Okay, so mom and dad had their kid's future laid out, and the kid wasn't going to do what mom and dad wanted. Sound familiar? Okay. How many of you were parents and wish you had a daughter like Miao Shan? Yeah? Okay. When the king learned that his daughter refused to marry, he was furious, and he tried to punish her by making her perform menial tasks. Her sisters and her mother had to persuade her to bow to her father's wishes, or they tried to persuade her, but in vain. Okay. Finally, the king threw up his hands and set Miao Shan to live in a monastery. It's like, I can't take you anymore in this house. Get out of here, kid. And he ordered the nuns there to make his daughter perform only the most difficult and backbreaking tasks, and to treat her so purely that she would change her mind and submit to his will. Sounds like the king had a little bit of an ego problem. You know, he was a big controller, wanted to control everyone and everything. Yeah, and if his will wasn't carried out, was going to push others until, you know, what he wanted got done. Do you know people like that? Are you sometimes like that? Okay, so the girl was forced to carry wood and water and to build a garden in barren soil. Thanks to the devoted efforts of the young nun, the land turned into a paradise. Miao Shan lovingly tended all the plants so well that the garden became lush and even retained its splendor during winter. Apparently from nowhere, a spring emerged very close to the kitchen. So that made it much easier for all the people working in the kitchen. And the animals began to assist Miao Shan in carrying out her labors. Okay? So, you know, you look at this part and you can see, well, somebody who cares about others attracts help to them. Yeah? And it's true in life, isn't it? You know, if you care about others and you do virtuous actions and you're generous and so forth, you attract help. And she was doing something good for everybody's benefit, and so the animals came to help her, and even though it was backbreaking, she stuck with it and, you know, made it into a very beautiful place. Okay. When the king heard about these miracles, he flew into a rage and wanted to kill Miao Shan. He wanted to kill his own daughter. I mean, this guy has problems. Yeah, but there's a lot of people like that in our society, aren't there? We read about this kind of thing a lot. Well, what about this whole thing that's been in the press recently about beating kids? Yeah, and your kids don't obey you, you beat them. Okay, so the king was in that lineage. Okay, so he decided, he flew into a rage and wanted to kill her. He told the nuns to force her to her knees, but since they weren't able to, he went and burnt down the monastery and wanted, including all the occupants. Yeah, so somebody really with power problems. And they say they've done studies recently that people who have a lot of power have less empathy. Yeah, so here it is. But when Miao Shan saw that the building was on fire, she pierced her tongue with a hairpin, and soon blood started to shoot from it. This summoned the storm clouds, and it started to rain. The fire was extinguished, and all the nuns were saved. Okay? So, she has some kind of special power here. Yeah? So, you know, again, whether it's literal or not, even, you know, if we don't believe in these kinds of powers, still you can see sometimes in a very dire situation, if somebody acts with strong compassion or with incredible skillful means, they can change the whole dynamics of a very terrible situation. So the king refused to give up, and to get rid of his daughter once and for all, he decided to have her executed. But no weapon could kill her, because she was protected by Sakra, which was one of the Indian gods who in China came to be known as the Jade Emperor. Okay, who was the ruler of one of the heavens. Sakra was also one of the gods that initially requested the Buddha to teach after the Buddha gained awakening. Sword after sword, arrow after arrow broke before they could touch her body. Then suddenly the air became very still, and a huge white tiger appeared. He grasped Miao Shan and bounded away in a single giant leap. It was in this way that Miao Shan reached the intermediate world and met Yama, the ruler of the hell realms. Okay, so, you know, if you think about this, when we hear this kind of story, you know, we usually think, oh, what a terrible king. Yeah, and here she is, very pure of heart, and she's holding up throughout all of this. But, you know, when she was taken to the intermediate world and met Yama, that might have been, you know, this is I'm making up an interpretation here, a time when maybe she felt a little bit discouraged. Maybe it all became a little bit much for her. You know, here was her father trying to kill her. Here was everything that she was doing being unappreciated, feeling not understood by the world. Yeah, so she went through a difficult time, and that could be symbolized by, you know, because, I mean, if you think of yourself, if you have some power-hungry person who is persecuting you, or getting on your case, or even somebody, you know, I mean, it was her father, somebody she loved and cared for, who turns on you and starts harming you, how do you feel? Yeah, how do we react in this situation? We get pretty upset, don't we? We get angry, we get depressed, we get discouraged. Okay. So Yama led Miao Shang to her to the chambers, you know, through the chambers in the hell realms, which were filled with the suffering cries of so many living beings. Okay. Now, think of yourself. Yeah, here you are, a situation, somebody who loves you turned against you, nobody appreciates you, they're trying to kill you and persecute you, and then you go into a room filled with more sentient beings who are just incredibly screaming in their suffering. Do you have any energy left to have compassion for them? No, because our self-centered thought has completely, it's acted as a, what do you call it, like a vortex that's just drawn into it all of our energy, and we continue, you know, in our depression and our self-pity of just circling round and around about our own problems, and we have no, you know, it's like, oh, there's all these sentient beings, I don't have any energy to attend to their suffering. Okay, but Miao Shang pulled herself out of whatever mental state she was in, and she sent her deepest compassion to all these crying and screaming sentient beings. One by one, they were liberated by her compassion, and the hells filled with light, music, and wonderful scents. Okay, so when you think about this, yeah, right in the middle of feeling totally lousy, what is it that brought her out of that? Yeah, paying attention to other living beings, cultivating compassion for them. And this is the advice that His Holiness the Dalai Lama gives us again and again on how to handle our especially when we have low self-esteem, these kinds of things, when we don't like ourselves very much or just think we're unqualified, horrible people, instead of dwelling in that thought, look outward to see other living beings and their situation, and let our hearts open in compassion for all those other living beings. Okay, so Yama had to send Miao Shan away from the hell realms, as powers like hers had no place in hell. She was disrupting the status quo. As she was leaving, he gave her a peach of longevity as a gift. Miao Shang now flew through the sky and reached the island of Putoshan, where she remained in deep meditation for many years. So Putoshan is a small island off the coast of China. It's not too far from Shanghai. It's around the center of China, off the coast there. And so she went there. So she had just had this experience of, being persecuted, or loved one turning on her, going to the hell realms, generating compassion. She went into retreat and started, really seriously doing some meditation, so that she could overcome all of her defilements and really be of the greatest benefit to sentient beings. Okay, during this period, she lived only on the dew of grasses and the scent of flowers. Yeah. Then one day when she was in deep meditation, after she had been in deep meditation for many years, she saw the image of her father in the last stages of severe illness. The doctors were helpless. Her father could neither sleep nor eat. He was going to die. So she had this vision in her meditation. Okay. Meanwhile, back at the court, suddenly a monk appears at the king's court and promised to heal him. Guess who the monk was? Yeah. To achieve this, however, he would have to prepare a special medicine from the eyes and the arms of a human who had never experienced either anger or hatred. Difficult to find the eyes and arms from somebody who's never gotten angry. This type of being, the monk said, was a bodhisattva, who would joyously fulfill his request. And such a person lived on the island of Putoshan. So the king sent a messenger who soon found the bodhisattva. Miao Shan was happy to give her arm and her eyes, cut off her arm, take out her eyeballs. And they were prepared and made into medicine. Okay. Now, go back to your situation, yeah? You were feeling so lousy, so depressed, so, horrible because all these things had happened. You start to meditate on compassion. You kind of pull yourself out of it, and then you hear that the very person that was the source of your most miserable time was dying. Yeah. How would you feel? Could your compassion remain steady, or would your compassion go, Yeah, I hope he has a lousy death and regrets what he did to me on his deathbed. How would we feel? What is our mind like? Do we wish people to be punished and harmed when they harm us? or can we forgive them and let go? Okay, so this is the question to ask. Now, would we give our arm and our eyes as medicine to save that person? Yeah. Would we even give our kidney, to save somebody? Difficult thinking of doing that, isn't it? Okay. So, this medicine, made from her arms and her eyes, instantly brought about the king's recovery. The king tried to thank the monk, but the monk told him that only the person who had selflessly given of her own body deserved the king's gratitude. Yeah. And then the monk disappeared as suddenly as he had come. So the king decided to travel with the queen to Putoshan to bring a wonderful gift to the mysterious life-saving donor. Okay, you got the king, you got the scene. Okay. So when the king and queen found the cave where the bodhisattva dwelled, they discovered that this miraculous being was their daughter, Miao Shan. Okay, now, how do you think the king and the queen felt at that moment? Maybe a little bit ashamed. Yeah. At the moment of recognition, when they recognized their daughter, the air became filled with a delicate scent, and flowers rained down from the ceiling of the cave. The cave was bathed in brilliant light as Miao Shan transformed into her sacred manifestation with 1,000 eyes and arms and floated away. Okay? So, what was going on with Miao Shan? Her father and mother arrived after all this has happened. Yeah. And she's been, sacrificed her eyes and her arm for their benefit. Yeah. And they come, and now they feel a bit contrite. Yeah. How do we feel when somebody who's harmed us feels contrite? Kind of smug and arrogant and, well, I'm glad you finally got it. Yeah. But that's not how Miao Shan felt. Okay? That was the moment, that was the peak moment where she actually transformed into 11 heads and 1,000 arms with 1,000 eyes. Yeah. So by the force of that compassion and the force of the virtue created by that type of compassion, that's when she attained awakening. Okay? And she floated away. She had become the embodiment of the purest, unconditional compassion. Yeah. So in Chinese, Quan means hearer of the cries of the world. And that's exactly what she did. She heard the cries of the world and, was liberated by transforming her mind in reaction to them. Humbled and in gratitude, her parents began their own spiritual practice and meditation. So her parents finally got it. They built a shrine in Lace where they had reunited with their daughter, and today it is known as Fragrant Mountain. Okay. Meanwhile, Putoshan has, in China, there's 4 great mountains for 4 different bodhisattvas. Manjushri and Chenrezig and Samantabhadra and Kshitigarbha. Yeah? And so you can go to those different mountains. They're pilgrimage places. I've been to 3 of them, including Putoshan. Yeah. There's also another story about Putoshan. Okay. And we have a picture. We should maybe bring it in here. I'm not sure where it is. It's a picture that's about this big. The background is a light blue, and there's a statue of Kuan Yin in the middle of it. Anybody? Yes. It's somewhere. I'm not sure where. Somewhere in the Abbey. We should take it out and hang it. Because here's the story behind it. Okay? In 916 AD, a Japanese monk tried to take a statue of Kuan Yin from the Chinese mainland back to Japan. They got as far as Putoshan, and a fierce storm prevented them from going any further. So they had to stop at Putoshan with this statue. And while the monk was sleeping, Kuan Yin came to him in his dreams and told him that if he would leave her here on Putoshan, she would let him return home and enable him to return home safely. So he left the statue in Putoshan. The weather cleared up. He returned home, and the statue has been in Putoshan ever since, and I saw it when I was there, and that's where that picture comes from. So we need to find that picture. Okay? Yeah. So that's a little bit about, the stories behind Kuan Yin. And in the 108 manifestations of Kuan Yin, some of them are very fierce. Yeah, not always kind and compassionate with 1,000 arms or a vase and a willow branch, but sometimes very fierce, because sometimes compassion needs to be quite fierce. Yeah, quite strong, when we act with compassion, we need to just say, enough, cut it out. Yeah. So don't think that compassion is always, oh, poor baby, I'll fix things for you. Sometimes, to be very compassionate, we have to be extremely assertive. Yeah. Okay. So she's the patron saint of women, fishermen, sailors, because of this thing on the sea, merchants, craftsmen, and children, among many others. Okay. Have any comments or questions about the story? Does it mean anything to you? Yeah? Does it make you think a little bit?
How she gives all of herself sacred to God.
Yeah.
Truly love, kindness, compassion.
Yeah.
To help those two people open up.
Right. Yeah. So the 2 people who had so much hatred towards her were the ones that she turned around and helped the most. Yeah, and didn't give up on. Yeah. So that's really a lesson for us in compassion. But you also have to see in the story that she couldn't help them initially because they were too closed. Yeah, she had to wait until the right time. Only at the right time could they be helped. And so to remember that too when we are trying to help others, because sometimes we try and help somebody and they are not ready to be helped. And we can do backflips and somersaults and the person is totally resistant. So at that moment it's very tempting for us to throw in the towel and say forget it. and walk away in anger and disgust, feeling very unappreciated. Yeah. And you know what this story is showing is at that time, you don't walk away. You just realize this person is not open at this time. Yeah. We need to wait until the timing is suitable. And then something can happen. Think about it the other way around, too. Maybe Kuan Yin has been trying to help us our whole lifetime. And how have we been responding? You know, because Kuan Yin appears in many, many different forms, you know, and they're not announced. It's not like, you know, you come to the Abbey, you get a name tag, you know. Kuan Yin doesn't, you know, kind of go places. Hi, I'm Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva. Yeah, but, you know, who might we have encountered in our life? You know, different people at different times in our life who were trying to help us, and we were totally shut and closed to that help. Yeah, and yet Kuan Yin, in manifesting in various ways, didn't give up and kept appearing as different people and different times throughout our life. Yeah. So when we sometimes feel like, oh, I've just been doing so much for this person and they're so resistant and I can't take it anymore. You know, flip the story around and, well, what about people who've been trying to help me my whole life? And I've been throwing dirt in their faces while they've been doing it. Yeah. It makes us a little more humble. Yeah. Makes us a bit more humble. And I think it's that kind of humility that really opens us up to receive the help of sentient beings and the help of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Yeah, we need that kind of humility. Mm-hmm.
But I'm way, way far from being able to use my limbs for my life to help the people that I want to help and I would love to help.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, can you patiently see me until the moment will come?
Okay, so you're saying that you're very far from being able to give your eyes and your limbs to somebody, to the people you want to help. So what do we do in the meantime? Okay, what we do in the meantime is first we do our Dharma practice. Yeah, and that's where, because the following teachings, you know, will be on parting from the four clingings. So this teaching is really going to show us how to improve the state of our mind and how to separate ourselves out from the kind of clinging and grasping and attachment that limits our ability to help and that keeps us stuck in samsara. Because when we're stuck in samsara, it's very difficult to help anybody because our own mind is so confused and so full of rubbish. Okay, so we have to work on our own mind and liberate ourselves. Yeah. At the same time, and then we do that by practicing the teachings. Yeah. At the same time, we have to practice helping in whatever small way we can do now. Yeah. So, you know, don't think of, you know, I have to wait until I'm Kuan Yin and then pull out my eyes and cut off my arm to help somebody. But how can I help somebody today, right now? How can I extend some kindness to somebody right now? Okay, well, there's the stink bugs this is the season for the stink bugs to appear in the buildings. Yeah, so the stink bugs won't hurt you. You can, you know, carry them out in your hands. You carry them outdoors and liberate them. Okay? Or you see a spider in the building and you take a jar and put a piece of paper under it to catch the spider and take it outside. Yeah. Or you see something that needs picking up, or somebody that needs help, and you just go do it. Yeah. Or maybe somebody needs a pat on the back and a smile. Yeah. So we just see how we can reach out to people in whatever capacity we have right now. You know, later on when you go back to the unreal world and you go back to your work, yeah, then, you know, to have some compassion for your colleagues and for your boss. I read somewhere something that they asked people the time of the day when they were most unhappy, and most people said it was when they were with their boss. You know, don't you think bosses need some compassion? Yeah? Bosses, yes, they need to have compassion, but they need some compassion themselves too. Yeah, instead of everybody complaining about them and blaming everything that goes wrong on them. Yeah, so when you go back to work, have some compassion for your boss or for your colleagues or for your neighbor, yeah, who screams and yells. Yeah, and just try and do, you know, whatever you can in whatever way you can. Yeah, somebody cuts you off on the highway. You don't scream at them and give them the finger. You just say, please, come. You know, if you're in a hurry, maybe somebody in the car is having a baby. Because this is what really changed my mind about people cutting each other off, is when Mary Grace was having her baby. I was with her, and she was going to have it at home, and it wasn't going well. She had to go to the hospital. We had to put her in the car, and it was one of these rides to the hospital. And then I realized, oh, this is why people sometimes cut people off on the road. It's not because they're mean and nasty. It's because somebody's having a baby, or somebody is having a heart attack, you know? And even if it's not that, still, if somebody really needs to get somewhere that fast, let them go. Yeah? And we don't need to get, you know, fall into road rage and ruin our own life and the lives of whoever is sitting in the car with us. Yeah. So there's all sorts of even small ways where we can apply compassion in our lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What really gets me about the story is that her father was trying to make her completely miserable. And I'm assuming what she was experiencing would have been the results from karma about her life. And in the same situation, even if I would have the awareness to act virtuously, I would be sitting the whole time and just complaining and, you know, whining about it. And rather than focusing on the results she was experiencing,
Yeah.
she's single-pointedly focused on her causes for living.
Yeah.
Which is really powerful, which is what we're all supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so really saying how, you know, in a similar situation for us, when people are getting on us, how we complain and whine and feel sorry for ourselves and make everybody else miserable and make ourselves miserable. And how she was able to respond. She kept her mind focused not on what others were doing to her, but focused on how she could respond to them with compassion, and focused on accepting that I created the cause for this. Yeah. So instead of, look what my mother and father are doing to me, look at this and that and that and that, you know, it was like, I created the cause. Stop complaining. To me, anyway, that works like so well as a thought training technique when I'm experiencing suffering. Just to say, I created the cause. That stops the complaining mind for me. You know? Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking, and this is just
since this is so recent, just thinking about the timing and the Buddha's knowing what we need to, inspire us. So, a couple of years ago, a Chenrezig statue gets dropped, right, and bent.
Mm-hmm.
And at that moment, people are thinking, oh, look, the statue's damaged. How could this happen? And the person, feeling so badly. And then time goes by, and then it turns out that someone we know is casting something close by, and we send the statue to be fixed. And normally a foundry like that wouldn't fix it, or they'd say, this is going to be $2,000, we're too busy, go away. But just the timing of it, and then this person has the skill to fix it, and all these people see this image, and we don't know what's going to happen out of that. But, it was these doors opening because we didn't know what was behind us first dropping of the statue.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. It's like karma works in and this is a true story, by the way. Yeah, you can see the statue. They fixed it beautifully. But just how, all these people at the foundry had a chance to practice generosity, how they got good seeds planted in their mind stream from, making this offering of repairing this statue. Yeah.
I misunderstood, but it's okay to retreat yourself from what's causing you to
Okay. Yeah, so what happens when you're in a situation where the pain and suffering is just too much? Yeah? Then, do what you need to protect yourself and relax yourself. Having compassion does not mean you allow somebody to harm you. Repeat. Having compassion does not mean you allow someone to harm you. Yeah, because they're creating a lot of negative karma by harming you. You can defend yourself, you can intervene and stop it, but you want to do it without anger and hatred towards the other person. If you're in a situation that calls for a lot of compassion and you're exhausted, then clearly you have to rest, don't you? If you push yourself, it's not going to work. Because you push, you're going to get exhausted. And then instead of being able to help anybody else, you're going to be the one who needs to be helped. So we need to learn to keep ourselves balanced. And when we're exhausted, take that time to rest. And remember that some rest is physical, sleeping, for example, but some rest is mental. Giving ourselves some time to do some extra meditation or read a Dharma book. Yeah, or take a walk and say mantra. There's many ways to relax the mind that can be very helpful to do when our mind gets really tight. Mm-hmm.
I recently saw a documentary about a woman who started a foundation that went to help women who were being abused in their home by husbands, and she traveled to many other countries, and she said the most difficult time she had was in Tibet, because the culture there was indoctrinated with the fact that women felt that this was their karmic load, and there was no support for that.
Okay, so we find sometimes in Buddhist countries people who misunderstand karma, and when they're experiencing abuse or something, saying, I created the cause, therefore I just have to sit here and let the abuse happen. Okay? That is a misunderstanding of karma. Yeah, we practice saying, I created the cause, so that we don't get angry and so that we don't harm somebody else back. But that doesn't mean that we allow somebody to harm us when it's possible to stop the situation without, killing the other person. Yeah. And without karma does not mean you blame yourself for it. Yeah, that's a misunderstanding of karma. So
The woman was working again. This that.
Yeah.
And you pointed out that you're allowing your husband to generate that kind of self.
Right.
So it needs to stop.
Yeah, so in a situation of domestic violence, if the woman just says, I created the cause, I just have to bear the result, she also needs to think from the viewpoint of her husband that he's creating a lot of negative dharma by beating her, and by stopping the situation, she can also prevent him from creating that karma. Yeah. So it's very important to understand karma correctly. It doesn't mean fate. It doesn't mean you just give up on things. Okay? Yeah, that's a good point. I was at a conference once when I heard a Buddhist monk tell a story about a woman whose husband was beating her, and she just stuck with him until finally at the end he turned around. And I thought, really? And I was very uncomfortable with that story, because you can also, because the woman is very like, if I just stay with him long enough, he'll realize the harm he's doing, he'll realize how much he loves me, and therefore he'll change. Forget it. Yeah. I think you have every right to say this behavior is unacceptable, I'm out of here, and that also gives him a chance to think about his behavior and change. Yeah? So you don't have to, again, scream and yell and call somebody names, but you certainly can stop the harm.